Okay, my friends, welcome back to my continuing tutorial or visit of my gaming system, Stellar Frontiers or Interstellar Frontiers, working titles. This current episode session would be dealing with creating your shadow agents, shadow op teams, also termed 007s, and spies, special agents, special op teams, any slew of different possibility names, however you choose to use them, name them in your own house. Now, why would we need shadow agents, shadow teams? Why do we use them in the real world? Sometimes you need to know information about your enemies, your friends, your neighbors. Sometimes you need to defend against their assets and attempts at espionage and sabotage. So having the ability to raise and support these valuable instruments is imperative. Now, in the very beginning of the establishment of a house, you're going to have very few agents to begin with, and of those agents, they're not going to have nearly as much abilities or equipment capability-wise that we would like to give them, of course. Now, we start by having already created our various ministries, which I believe I did several sessions ago. These particular folks belong to the Ministry of Intelligence. At the beginning of the establishment of this house, I have roughly 10,000 population, which allowed me to have, based off of the formula, approximately 22 employees for my Ministry of Intelligence, of which 25% serve as administrative staff. So, roughly 6, maybe 7 of my 22 work in the office, so to speak. That left me with 15 floops to work with. And because these are all technical, educated individuals, they have to start out in, they don't have to, but they start out as Tech 1, because we came with we have plenty of Tech 1 individuals to recruit from. That gives them a tried rating as for experience or for ranking. This gives them a slight advantage. Now, that's not to say you can't create these from untried personnel, from quote workers, from uneducated personnel. It just means they're not starting out as a tech, and they would have to eventually, at some point, gain additional education. Then the lower ranking also gives them lesser modifiers. Now, starting with the shadow agents, of course, you begin with picking the genome that you're going to work with. If you've already chosen a genome to represent your entire house, then you would use that genome ideally at the beginning. That's not to say that later you wouldn't recruit outside genomes, as they come in, and over time we'll see that. We'll see event roles that have groups moving into our territory and becoming members of the overall population, which means our demographic for population would change. Since I chose Shadans, which is my personal preference anyway, I established them from that perspective. And I know that they're a small individual, so small race. Like I said, I know the rankings are going to begin at tried, which is 100 for points. Since their size small, they have two body points. It's 2.0. And some people have asked me, why bother with the fractions? You don't need to have a fraction. You can make the argument that they're 20. Their body points are 20 if you want to make it that. Their body points are 2. But there are damage and weapons that and things that can occur that give you fractions of damage, like half a point or a tenth of a point. So if my agent took a tenth of a point damage, it would be at that point 1.9. This is the reason why I always have the decimal point in there. It just, from my perspective, it just makes it simpler for me to remember it. The other point, we're not at a point, we are not developed enough, established enough to give these agents bioorgans or cyberware and make them into a more faster, improved, more dangerous individual than what they already are. So at that point, whenever, as a sidebar, whenever we add a bioware, a cyberware or a bioorgan or something, we're going to detract from the body points of the individual. So while they gain strength, yes, if it's a little shaky, it's because Goober over here's got an itch in her ear. You got an itch in your ear? Yeah? Okay. So, yeah. If we add bioorgans or cyber technology to any individual, you're going to subtract from their body points overall. Body points are finite. We don't gain extra. These are not hit points. These are what your body can sustain before they're dead. If they hit zero, they're zero. Now there's technology that can help mitigate some of that, and extremely high technology that can mitigate a lot of that. Now, the downside of using bioware, of course, is you're reducing the humanity factor, the human flesh, the meat of the individual. So if I put a vibro shiv in my hand that's going to now, pop out here, pop out of a finger, or pop out of my palm, however I choose to have it mounted, it's going to take a 0.1 away from my body point. So in the case of a small individual, that's a significant, exchange. And what we're going for here is a built-in system of checks and balances. The idea being is you can make some pretty dangerous, high-tech cyber individuals, but at some point they're going to cease to become human, and they're going to become something like a cyborg or worse. And if they get to the extreme where they've used up all their body points, they must be totally 100% dependent on the cyberware and bioorgans that are now installed in them, which can be a problem. Just pointing it out. There's reasons for it. So, and because I picked a Shidan, Shidans have some natural abilities. Now they have a racial bonus. They get a +5 to their physical attribute, 5 to their mental attribute versus investigations and searches. They're genetically charismatic, which gains them a +5 to their seduction attribute, and they get additional +10 mental attribute because they're genetically enhanced intelligence. So that doesn't mean they get a +15 for everything. It just means they get a +15 towards investigations and searches, plus the base, and then a +10 stealth because they're genetically stealthy. But then they have some negatives as well when applied to certain deals. In that case, I made a point when I create these sheets. The base is always here, so I have a +10 to all attitudes or attributes. I always get that wrong. It's attributes, not attitudes, but I have a tendency to cross them over. So if excuse me, we have a base 10 for stealth. This character is going to start out with a 20 for stealth, and then if we have a base 10 for all of our attributes, then I'm going to have a +15 for this one, a +10 for reflexes or reactions, +15 for physical, +20 for mental, +10 for fear, +10 for combat. Because they are individuals, they have a base. All individuals have a base movement of 1, which gives them 1 hex and 1 kilometer per hour base. And there's a version of this because when we're dealing with personal level combat, we're using a map that 1 hex equals 1 meter. So we're going to move 1 meter each. It sounds like you're maneuvering really slow, 1 meter every combat round. When you look at a combat round being 6 seconds, you're covering a meter every 6-7 seconds at a general casual walk. Then there's a modifier chart in the movement that allows you to adjust accordingly. So you could potentially, at a full run, be moving 7 meters per combat round. It means you're going to cover 7 meters in or 70 meters roughly in a minute. That's fast. I'm just saying that is very fast if you think about it, right? So we have base detection of 10. And when we see here, tech level or specialty, well, they haven't gained a specialty yet, and they're tech level 1. So we put the Roman numeral 1 down. Let's see. I also gained, in this case, physical searches. Plus 15 based on the mat rolls. And investigation plus 15, also based off the map. Now, as we can point out right now, we have no skills because we've not trained this individual in any specific skill. But looking into the book, I discovered that she, based off of ranking, would be able to gain 1 skill when the opportunity comes up. And there are no cybernetic or bio implants, so there's no construction, there's no upkeep cost, and there's no negative body point modifier. Upkeep is another point. The more higher advanced the technology, the more expensive it is to maintain it. So it is, eventually, you could have a uber cyber spy or an uber cyber defender or something like this who can really do some serious damage and move like a superhero. But they're going to be really expensive to maintain. And you might say, oh, well, what's 10 or 15 credits out of a budget of 1,500 credits a cycle? That's nothing. Well, when you start having 10 or 20 of these that can cost you 150 to 200 credits or 300 credits, you find your budget goes up considerably. And then the maintenance and repair costs, so on and so forth. Meanwhile, the rest of it is pretty straightforward. In this case, I've already decided on names. I know it should be in the email. I did a general roll off of the height chart and the weight chart. My profession is going to be shadow agent, or however you choose to call it. Now, your standard of living. This actually is fairly important aspect when it comes to the personalities or your NPCs. The higher your standard of living, the more impact your personality will have, or able to project impression, more status or stance or persona that can be projected in higher circles. That means they have bonuses. A lower standard of living can get you to 0 modifiers or negative modifiers. So having an agent who's poorly paid is going to give you negatives to that agent's performance. Having your agent paid fairly well is going to mean that they have access to the credits they need to buy good clothes, or to buy very good clothes, to make an impact, to feel good about themselves, to feel that they're contributing, so on and so forth. So when you look on the big scheme of things in the economics, a single Caesar, as we call the dollar, a credit is 1,000,000 Caesars. So paying a spy 1.5 credits every 10 days is excessive in some people's eyes. And when you look at their cost of living and the fact that they're putting their life on the line in very extreme ways, it is not unreasonable. It isn't. Of course, it's also a matter of how the economics work. So I chose, in this case, based off, I have to keep in mind that my house starts out with no credits and has to generate everything from the exchange. And so I'm not rolling in credits right now. At best, I might get 30 to 50 credits a cycle. So I have to be cautious about how much I pay and how many people I can support. Well, one of my limitations, of course, is the ministry itself can only support 15 individuals or 15 employees that are not staff. So I'm choosing to create 5 shadow agents, and I'm going to make 2 5 fluid teams, shadow teams. So there's my 15 people. So in this case, I'm going to give the agents a high quality standard of living, which gains them a +5 to both the negotiation and searches. So when I come down here to do physical search, this is now a +20. In heart, no, I'm sorry, +15. This would be a +20. No, that's something I have to explain, I guess. There's two types of searches. There's the physical search. This is where we're searching a room, or searching a location, or searching a person, searching for something specific. And then there's the general search. The general search is like I'm doing research. I'm going to go and look up the address for somebody, or I'm going to try to locate a valuable or a higher tech weapon in a place that shouldn't normally have them, or they would be hard to find. So this agent would be able to, in the field perhaps, to search for stuff in lieu of not having access to equipment. Perhaps she can do a search and find it and then pay for it or steal it if necessary, keeping in mind that there are checks and balances for that set of rules as well. Investigations. Well, investigations are yet a third kind of search, but we're doing a different kind of search at this point. We're doing more like your gumshoe, your detective work. We're investigating facts and information and backgrounds and things like this. And then, of course, negotiations when you're dealing with other people. So when you're in negotiation can be everything from having a general conversation where you're trying to get information, trying to conduct an investigation, but so it can affect it. You can also get somebody to surrender, or to prevent yourself from, your agent can help prevent themselves from being shot. Well, there's a number of opportunities for that particular thing to come into play. All right, so that just leaves us with general equipment. Now, when we started out, as I pointed out, our colony effort came with a limited amount of small arms and body armor, so we had to dole these things out. In this case, I gave each agent a ballistic pistol, personal body armor, which has an armor point of 2, which gives us 2 up here. There's no damage reduction at this point, and a melee weapon. And I chose to call my particular melee weapon that I give them a slim knife, but it's still a melee, still a Tech 1 melee weapon. So, and then when I applied them, I went to my equipment guy, or my warehouse where I have these things stockpiled, and I deducted those items from it. So I reduced my stockpile for additional equipment. The point on weapons and gear, soft points. Soft points, if you're familiar with combat vehicles of any sort, you know what a hard point is. Hard point is usually a pintle mount or some kind of fixed reinforced spot on a vehicle that allows you to mount a weapon. So in that aspect, a human being also has a limit to how many items they can effectively carry and utilize at any given time. So you have 5 soft points, and these soft points would include weapons and specialty gear, anything that you could carry physically on yourself and access in a combat round. If you could grab it and access it in 6 seconds, it's going to use up a soft point. Now, it's possible to have a pouch or a pack or a backpack or something like this, and that will take up a soft point, and then within it you've got additional soft points worth of gear or storage. At that point there's going to be negative modifiers for accessing it. So if I have to get into, if I've got a pack on my belt and it will take 2 combat rounds to get something from that pack. Now if I have a backpack on my back, potentially it could take 4, because I'm going to have to remove the pack, get into the pack, get the item out of the pack, and then remount the pack, kind of thing. Once again, checks and balances. That's why there's more space listed than there are points. That's how I came up, or how I created my first shadow agent. And then pretty much all I did was wash and repeat. So I have 5 of these ready to go. Each has their own name and training. Let's talk about training for a second. I've mentioned it before. There are several ways to gain training. We have education builds. We have specialty builds. We have prefabs that include education prefabs. Now these are just basically structures. We're going to acquire over time as events and traffic bring other more experienced techs or tech specialists to our worlds. We're going to then utilize these individuals, these numbers, in plugging them into factories or in ministries or whatever to enhance bonuses for given either production or reduce costs, or reduce the number of required techs to run something. As an example, if a factory acquires 20 Tech 1s, an addition of a Tech 3 specialist can reduce those Tech 1 needs by as much as 4. So now we would need 16 Tech 1s and the Tech 3. See? And then potentially you could get a Tech 5 that would come along and would reduce those Tech 1s even less. So we can free up those technicians to be used in other locations. The other part of that is a lot of these specialists come with come with skill sets, and those skill sets can be taught. You would set up what's called a dojo or a school, and the dojo is a smaller version of the school. And then that individual can teach that skill to X amount of others. So if I have a NPC that comes along who has the swordmanship skill, the melee weapon skill, I could then take this individual and directly assign that person to one of my agencies. For this case, if I had another opening in my Ministry of Intelligence, I could assign this person to the Intelligence Ministry and use them as an agent to some degree. Or I can set this individual up in a training facility that I create, even if it's just a Tech 1 housing unit that I convert, or warehouse I convert and call it a dojo. At this point, the individual can now train up to 5 other individuals every 5 cycles, every 5 turns. Then I can take these agents and send them to school, so to speak. That takes them out of the rotation, out of action for 5 cycles. They also have to be present on the same planet that the trainer's at. You can't train yet. We have technology that allows for remote training, but we don't have that at the beginning. It's not available. The agent would then be out of service, so to speak, while they're being trained in this new skill. And then when at the beginning of the 6th cycle from the training, this individual will then have the skill of swordsmanship. Now, that would then mean I could then rotate this one back into service and then pull a second one out and put it back into the training program. So that's how I want to choose. And any of my floobs, any of my personalities can have this training, can go through training. They're only limited by access, the number of training slots available, and by how many skill sets they can acquire. Now, as they go up in ranking, they increase their tech levels. They gain additional skills, or skill slots, if you will, so they can add additional skills. And then the same thing goes for speciality. In order for a Tech 3, let's say a Tech 3 engineer, which is a specialty technician, to train non-special, just general techs to be engineers, those general techs need to be at least 3rd level. So they're going to be, he's going to train, up to 5 engineers in order to, as long as they have the criteria needed to do it. So this agent here could not be, I could not have a weapon specialist come along who's Tech 4 and then train this individual to be a weapon specialist, because this individual does not have enough ranking in it. Now that weapon specialist has a number of skills as part of the package. That individual can train those skills. So that's how this thing, or how we deal with this sort of thing. Now, the shadow op teams. These are basically your version of your SWAT or your Black Ops, and they're based on a squad. The squad is 5 individuals. Sometimes they can be an augmented squad to be up to 7, depending on the scenario and the specialty. And you have to get into certain stuff. So we're not going to create a heavy weapon squad, so for example, so that we wouldn't have an augmented squad. This is a special agents. I had 5 shadow agents, or 5 007s. That left me 10 floobs left over for my ministry. And I chose to make 2 squads. Now there's some advantages to doing this for a couple. Well, let's just start with a couple different things. One, we have a bonus modifier for a number of actions and interactions for our personalities, i.e. the agents in this case, to if they're supported by a team. This would be the team support. So if I send a 007 or 2 out on a mission and I decide to send a shadow op team as a backup, now I've got additional firepower and backup protection, extra eyes and ears on the ground, so to speak, to help protect my 007s and help them achieve the goal that they're set out to do. This gives them bonuses for having a support system in place, and vice versa. So if the shadow agent team, my shadow op team is in the field and they're paired up with a 007, they also get that bonus when they're interacting with something. Same would go if multiple units go out at the same time to the same job. Those things don't stack, mind you. It just means that you have support, immediate direct support. This also comes into play when I mentioned when I was creating my house defense, my protector service in the last episode. And I said that at some point I will take 1 or 2 platoons of my protectors, and I'll break them up into squad sheets, because I can dole them out as support teams for 007s as well, or to support shadow ops. So if I'm going to go steal blueprints from a neighbor for a new factory, perhaps I'm going to send and I don't have enough shadow op teams, I'm going to send a 007 or 2, and then I'm going to send 1 or 2 squads of my personal watch to go assist them and give them cover and to achieve this goal. Now, why would I want to do that? Well, for starters, it means that my watch teams, my protector service, if you will, have many more opportunities to gain ranking and improving their abilities. They also gain ranking in other venues. That means they become more adept at defending the house lord and her assets, the palace, etc., because they have a wider range of technical experience added to them. It's a good thing to do, in my opinion. There's also something to keep in mind too, especially in the beginning 20 or 30 cycles of a game. You just don't have enough resources to do as many operations as you might like to do, or to maintain certain operations. So you have to dig deep. You need to find creative ways to come up with those assets if necessary. And one of those, of course, is utilizing squads of your own protector service. Now, we don't do that with the militia or the planetary guard or the row guard. That's because those are combat units, pure and simple combat units, and they should not operate piecemeal. You know, if we operate them at the squad level, it's because we're doing a squad level combat. So now we have a platoon of militia there, but we're going to have 5 or 7 squads that are maneuvering around on the board. That way, it's just easier than trying to deal with 25 or 35 individuals and then your opposing bad guys. But that's just how that plays into things. So, like I said, because we're using 5 people, we know that based off of our lack of equipment, we just don't have the equipment to have really heavy infantry or specialized infantry units at this point. These are going to be light infantry, LIF. There's going to be 5 agents. Their base ranking is also tried because they came from our general pool of technicians. And I'm going to assign one of the 5 agents is going to be a sub-chief, and I'm going to give this particular person a name. And it's also going to be tried because we don't have any Tech 2 technicians at the moment. Now, one of the reasons we keep, like I said, just like at ships and in militia commands and anything else, I want to have the group for a ranking for the group, for the unit, and then I want an officer. I want that person in charge to have their own, because at some point I may need to wish to promote this individual to a new unit. So later down the road, when I create yet another shadow op team, this one here is going to be much more experienced than the newest one, and I'll be able to take this agent per se and assign this agent to that new squad, and then promote one of these individuals in here to that spot without seriously affecting the ranking. And yes, there is a set of mechanics for that sort of stuff. And like I said, our base move for the squad is the same because we're moving at the squad level, personal level. We already know I'm using Sedan, so I put all their basic stats in there. Body point. Now, it's in there. The thing about body points when we're dealing with larger units, the individual body point is still going to be 2.0, but there's 5 of them, so that gives us a 10.0 for the squad. So an entire platoon potentially has 50 body points, or 50 points of damage that they can sustain before totally being destroyed. Yeah, I gave them body armor. This is 3. It's a 3. The cap base is plus 10. I have soft points, so I gave them a melee weapon. I gave them a ballistic pistol. And because these guys are designed to be, or probably we'll see more in close combat, I assigned them one of the auto shot. That was available in my warehouse. I have fewer of them than I do rifles, but the rifles are needed for the militia and the combat units. They just seemed appropriate to me to give these guys a shotgun. That way I'm doling it out. And then I'm going to give them light body armor. Now, my agent has personal body armor. These guys have light body armor. In part, you've seen SWAT teams, they use body armor, and they're not bashful about everybody else knowing it. The shadow op team, in general, is not really meant to be, they're not agents in the way that the 007s are. They're not meant, they're supposed to still operate in the shadows, hence their names, but they can be equipped like soldiers that they are to some degree, and it's going to be obvious to those who spot them face to face. There are technology and ways of helping to disguise some of that, but we don't have access to anything of that nature at the moment. Something that's always worth thinking of and keeping in mind, that kind of stuff. We know that they're based off of the stats for an individual. Their stealth is 20, penetration right now is 5, or no, 10, because we're going off of a base. Search is 15. They have 5 reloads. No damage reduction. There you go. So, not a lot to it at the moment. Now, when I created the sheet here, I've got a squad unit information section. Then I have a vehicle section down here. Now, I haven't had any ability to assign vehicles to any units yet, but that's coming. There's several ways of acquiring them. Our Factory A produces a limited number of utility vehicles, VU, and in the game terms, that is a ubiquitous term. When we look at it at on the exchange, it's just listing how many tons of utility vehicles have been manufactured or in storage at a given time. What we can do is we can take, let's say, 5 tons of VU and pull it out of the warehouse. Now we have a decision to make. We have 5 tons of utility vehicle to utilize. Do we choose to make a single 5-ton truck, which means it's a vehicle that weighs 5 tons? It can carry, roughly 4 tons of stuff. I don't know. We'd have to look up the stats on that. Or we could create 5 1-ton trucks, and they're going to carry, each one carries fewer people and fewer equipment. Or we could take and create, let's say, 25 ATVs or motorcycles, roughly or each one weighing roughly 200 kilograms, or however that. I always get confused between the metric version of a pound. I know it's kg is an abbreviation, and I say it's a kilogram. Then I think a gram is a much smaller item. But anyway, that's still a pretty hefty piece of equipment, but it's an individual ride. So I could assign 5 ATVs. They're Tech 1, they're wheeled. So each Tech 1 wheeled has a soft point mount, so you can mount a rifle or some kind of light weapon on it, or carry a pack of gear or what have you. Or I could assign a single 1-ton ATV, a truck or some other kind of ground vehicle that to the unit, which means it has enough seating for the 5 members and their gear, and it's unarmored, but it gains some additional movement speed, carrying capacity. It means they can carry a little bit extra gear, reloads, that kind of stuff. Maybe mount a single hard point on it, which allow them to mount a light combat vehicle scale weapon, keeping in mind that the vehicle is not going to be armored, so it won't take much damage to destroy it. Or it could be a single 5-ton vehicle, which could potentially carry the entire platoon of these guys. It's just a matter of how you want to lay those out and how you want to utilize your assets. There are other pre-manufactured gear, equipment, vehicle-wise, that you can purchase or eventually manufacture yourself. It gives you better options. You can, like armored vehicles, for example, that you can assign to these guys. Helicopters, aircraft, hovercraft, anagrav, some aquatic, surface aquatic, submersible aquatic, a number of different versions. So there you have it, how to create your spies and shadow teams. That's right. Yes, is that right? Is that how we do it? Till the next one.